In other words, they're saying you put your money in our exchange and you can get rewards for it. And the bank's going, we don't want you to do that. We don't have the power to do that because we have to abide by the rules. And if you do that, our clients are going to leave us in a heartbeat and go to the exchanges. And this has been the debate behind closed doors around the whole Clarity Act. So this is going on. The bankers are hanging on to what they have and what they can do. Meanwhile, the new tech companies are doing this. And this is all going on at the Fed as well. It's a real interesting mix in terms of shake-up as finance. Now, you might be thinking, Derek, what has this got to do with me here in Australia?
Glad you asked.
What on earth are you going on about this for? Okay, let me put it in perspective for you.
The man, the myth, legend I just mentioned here, the man with all of the expertise, and we've got a lot to talk about today, it's Derek Whittaker. Good to see you, mate.
How you doing? It's great to be here.
It is great. Of course, this show is brought to you by...
Blue Sky Factory.
Absolutely. And if you need some education when it comes to the world of finance, this is the man to contact. Where can we contact you?
The website's the best way, blueskyfactory.com.au, and that's blue without an E, BLU Sky Factory.
Important. Don't put that E in there. Excellent, mate. Now, what is on the show today? What are we venturing into?
Many of us were with bated breath wondering what the central bank would do in terms of interest rates last week, and it's kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place with the oil prices as they are, concerns that, that escalation could lead to inflation for the banks. And they're going, what do we do here? Because, we want to stimulate the economy, but, it was almost like the consumers were hit for a double whammy because they're paying more at the pump.
Yep.
But if they go to interest rates, they're going to be paying more in terms of their mortgages and loans. So it was like a hard one to play.
No, it's pretty much, if you want shelter, walk to work. It's unbelievable. I'm glad that you're here to answer this for me, because I really didn't. I thought it was the wrong move. I thought that the interest rate should have stayed. That was my thing. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it should have stayed. I think just hold. I don't think this is going to be a long-term thing. I think America did the hold move. A lot of the other Western nations didn't. So I think it was kind of, I think they've jumped the gun a bit.
Yeah, I think that, okay, if you're worried about inflation, well, you're going to spend less because we're spending so much more at the petrol pump. And when I say that, it's not just about the price of your fuel. Obviously, this country runs on transport, so your food is up, your everything is up. Yeah.
Well, I had a client ring me yesterday, runs a lawn mowing business, and he's saying, Derek, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, what do I say to this guy? Because those are eating into his profits, these fuel costs, and he's going, I can hold it for a while, absorb it for a while, but
there's only so long.
And it's like, well, ultimately it's your decision. But I don't think it's going to be a long-term thing. I'm hoping it's not going to be a long-term thing, but I think there's more at play than meets the eye.
Agreed.
And I'm going to kind of dive into that a little bit today.
Let's
if you have a look at, let's just recap. And we don't hear from Canada all that often, but I'd like to hear their announcement. It was like going to a funeral, listening to the announcement of what they were going to do with interest rates. Have a listen to this footage. Don't tune out, because it is sad, but there's hope at the end of it. I'm going to show where this goes.
I'm looking for that light at the end of the tunnel.
Council maintained the policy rate at 2.25%, and we've held the policy rate at this level since October. The Canadian economy continues to face heightened uncertainty related to U.S. trade policy and geopolitical risks. Now the war in Iran has added a new layer of uncertainty. Inflation in Canada has been close to the 2% target for more than a year now. But as we've seen, the war in Iran is causing oil prices to move sharply higher, and this will push inflation up in the near term. Canada's economy is dealing with a lot, and we now face more volatility. Relative to our January forecasts, risks to economic growth are tilted to the downside. At the same time, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside because of the sharp increase in energy prices. Economic weakness combined with rising inflation is a dilemma for central banks. Increasing interest rates to slow inflation could further weaken the economy. Easing interest rates to support growth risks pushing inflation well above target. With inflation close to target and the economy in excess supply, the risk that higher energy prices quickly spread to the prices of other goods and services looks contained. At our meeting this week, we decided to maintain the policy rate at 2.25%. As the outlook evolves, we stand ready to respond as needed. We are continuing to assess the impact of U.S. tariffs and trade policy uncertainty and how the Canadian economy is adjusting. And we are closely monitoring the unfolding conflict in the Middle East.
Well, Derek, I can see why you don't invite him to parties. What an exciting, what an uplifting fella.
I know. And it's kind of like, look at that going, oh, do you put it in or you don't put it in? But,
No, I get it.
It's like, listening to it, you're going, if we do A, if we do B, if we do C, what do we do? And that's kind of look, Canada is more vulnerable in terms of its economy than other nations are.
Okay, and why is that?
Well, I think it's because the tariffs have taken them by surprise that Trump has imposed. Yeah. And, of course, they export a lot to the United States. Yeah. And so this has thrown them. They don't know what to do. Trump has thrown a real mixed bag. He's disrupted the entire global system, and it's starting to show, and he's making waves, and he's not ashamed to do that. He's not afraid to do that. He doesn't care what the other nations think.
This is the thing. For so many years, people have said, oh, gee, we've got to not get these keep politicians out of politics, if you like, get businessmen, get people who are outsiders to change it. Well, guess what? They've done that, and now everyone's whinging. It's crazy. The whole political game slows everything down, causes so much drama, and I just think that, ultimately, sometimes you have to look. You've got to crack some eggs to make an omelette, okay? And right now, the world needs to change, and this is the way.
Certainly a shake-up of the old system.
It is.
And so he's doing that on many levels. The other week, we talked about how he was shaking up the insurance industry through this war in Iraq with the Lloyds of London. Okay, that's a big deal. They've had a monopoly on shipping insurance for years, and Trump's gone, right, one of our departments in the United States government will insure your ship, and we will also escort you through the Straits of Hormuz to give you safety and security, get you out, and get your oil to the world. Okay? It's like... And he's come out and said they're wusses if they don't. They're weaklings if they don't do this and take it up. There's nothing to worry. We've destroyed the the Iran Navy.
Sure.
We've destroyed the Iran Navy. So you got nothing to fear. They have no more Navy to
honestly, they're out there with rocks and pea shooters. They've got nothing left. You're absolutely right. And, if we wind back a little bit, I thought this conflict, and I say conflict rather than war, because I thought, you know what, this is a 3-week thing. I think that's what it's going to take, 3 weeks to completely crush their infrastructure so that they can't fight back, and then they'll put some troops on the ground and tidy things up. Well, that hasn't happened, and it has surprised me.
I think they've got to be strategic as to what they actually bomb there, because you don't want to level the nation that it just utterly destroys, and the citizens have nothing to rebuild on, of course, because then that just turns hate into the United States again, and you got another problem after that.
That's right.
So they've got to be strategic as to what they do in terms of liberating the people there, if that's their aim and goal. They wanted to reduce the threat, of course, nuclear weaponry being developed.
Sure.
But they said, hey, I've heard speeches this morning where Trump was saying to them, look, we've allowed you the opportunity to develop energy based on nuclear energy, but you've took it too far. You want to develop that into weaponry, and we can't have that. So it's an interesting sort of debate here where, you're using uranium for what? Right? Well, you can use it for this and energy, but energy creation, free energy creation. But
end of the day, if you're America or any Western country and you're up against a country that literally teaches children in school death to America, why in the world would you want them to have nuclear weapons? And anybody and so many people are putting their hands up saying, oh, no, you can't be stopping them. That's their freedom to actually have that. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for freedom, as we all know. But you've also got know your enemy, okay? Know your friend. And why would you leave such dangerous weapons with somebody and a nation and an ideology that is so volatile?
It's contentious on both sides, and war always will be.
Of course.
Fighting always will be. And I think, there is a time for peace, and unfortunately there is a time for war. I'm not justifying the US actions here and this sort of stuff, but I look back in history and I go, there were times where war, you can see how that developed and why nations did that and reluctantly went to war. Interesting patterns too following that. I mean, it's been watching the criticism Trump has unleashed on Keir Starmer. It says, look, we just wanted 2 boats in the Gulf. You couldn't deliver. Never mind, we don't need you. We've done the job anyway. But I find it, he says it's very interesting that you reluctantly come to our aid when you expected us to. And I think to myself, that's a funny way of history repeating, because Britain was very much that way in the Second World War too. And I can understand it, why you want to send your citizens off to war.
Well,
but they underestimated the threat that was going on in Germany at the time. So, yeah.
They held back quite a while.
Yeah.
It's interesting on that. And just a little side note is, I remember when I was at school, I had a teacher who was way back, actually in primary school, I think year 6. And she was teaching me a lot about 1938. And we all think of the war obviously starting in 39. And she effectively said to me that the war started in 38 and, the world kind of was a bit late to sort of act upon it. So, interesting. I mean, it's been a while since I've been 11 years old, but I do remember that. And, you've got to think about the actions that lead up to these things. Okay, there are consequences to your actions.
Absolutely. And there's consequences for not making decisions as well, and inaction.
Exactly.
And I think we've got to think through that. A lot of people think, there's consequences for actions. Yes, and there's inaction. And I see this in people's finances as well.
Oh, I bet you do.
Right? When you make delays, you hesitate on the decision, you've missed the opportunity, the ship's left the port, and now the media's reporting on it as to what's going on, and you've missed the big gains that were potentially there, because it's the hot thing to talk about. I'd like to turn our attention now to, we heard from the Canadian Central Bank. I want to turn the interesting situation to what's been going on behind the scenes with the Fed that hasn't received a lot of media attention due to, of course, the conflict that's going on.
Sure.
There's been an interesting development. I'll let this clip explain what's happened. I'll just put a little bit of background on it. Jerome Powell put out a notice some time ago after there was investigations as to how money was being used to build that building at the Fed and do the renovations, and the budget absolutely went through the roof into the billions and billions of dollars. So they wanted to have some inquiries about that. He releases an unusual video justifying his position. What you've got to put this in cultural context is that the Fed has always operated independently of the US government. And Trump has been, well, this is the question. This is what's coming under scrutiny because they wanted to investigate him. Sure. Have a look at this clip as to what's happened in terms of the ruling as it had headed towards the courts.
Says she will appeal. Powell has been under investigation since late last year by the U.S. Attorney Bureau for his role in overseeing contracts, spending, and construction of the new Federal Reserve headquarters. Judge James Boasberg granted a request by Powell's team to quash or essentially get rid of subpoenas as part of the investigation. Boasberg writes, a mountain of evidence suggests that the government served these subpoenas on the board to pressure its chair into voting for lower interest rates or resigning. Meanwhile, Pirro is not giving up. Watch.
Jerome Powell today is now bathed in immunity.
Okay. And she comes after him quite a lot. Why won't he answer these questions? Now, the question is, do they have the jurisdiction over the Fed to actually ask these questions and to put them to court? What is really interesting too in terms of this is in the background, they are fighting the bankers and the crypto companies in fintech with the Clarity Act. Now, of course, last year we had a legislation go through, the Genius Act. Yep. Now they're fighting over the Clarity Act. And the big sticking point with the whole Clarity Act and the bankers versus the crypto companies is the crypto companies want to be able to offer their clientele the ability to stake or earn interest on their coins.
Right.
Okay. So for those who don't know what staking is, it's a techie way to earn interest or more coins if you deposit them in a, I want to say decentralized fashion. It can be done through decentralized, but also these companies are wanting to do it in a centralized way. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I know I'm going to confuse people.
It's a deep war. And,
in other words, they're saying you put your money in our exchange and you can get rewards for it. And the banks are going, we don't want you to do that. We have the power to do that because we have to abide by the rules. And if you do that, our clients are going to leave us in a heartbeat and go to the exchanges. And this has been the debate behind closed doors around the whole Clarity Act. So this is going on. The bankers are hanging on to what they have and what they can do, meanwhile, the new tech companies are doing this. And this is all going on at the Fed as well. It's a real interesting mix in terms of shake-up as finance. Now, you might be thinking, Derek, what has this got to do with me here in Australia?
Glad you asked.
What on earth are you going on about this for? Okay, let me put it in perspective for you. The United States is the biggest economy in the world. When America sneezes, the world feels it.
That's right.
The formation of the Reserve Bank of England and also the Federal Reserve of the United States was significant in banking history, whereby they could basically print money at will.
Yes.
All right, and do it under their own power and operate independently from governments, and in fact would lend to governments, and the governments would be in debt. And that's exactly what happens when they issue bonds, that they're IOUs the government owns, then the government enters into debt to these banks, and the banks are the ones who essentially control the governments because of the debt level. He who is in debt is slave to the lender.
People often say, Australia's in debt, America's in debt. To whom, right? And that's what's happening here. People just don't realise there's the actual level. So the control there is just massive. You've got control of the globe.
So trying to bring Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, through the court system is a very, very big power play that should not be underestimated in terms of how reserve banks and federal banks and central banks relate to the government moving forward. This is massive.
And also a lot of these people who are appointed to these boards when it comes to the Reserve Bank, whichever, in whatever country happens to be, they are very often political appointments. There's that crossover. So exactly, where does the justice come in this? What a mess, mate.
It is a massive mess. And Trump's not letting it go, as we see in this third clip here.
I don't know, Trump's a bit shy. He doesn't like to talk about this sort of thing. Shall we jump into it?
He has a good old swipe. Listen to this.
Steel columns outside, as an example, were meant to be covered. Exposed steel is unusual to have in building. What I do best in life is build. I build buildings really well and under budget and ahead of schedule. That's what I do. Unlike the Fed building, which is going to cost billions of dollars. It may never open. I mean, right now, we have a wonderful a wonderful new head of the Fed coming in. I don't know if he'll ever be able to occupy this complex that was destroyed by Jerome, too late. Powell, I call him too late because he's always too late with interest. Should cut interest rates. He should cut them right now. They should have a special meeting. What's a better time to cut interest rates than now? A third grade student would know that. But
he's a classic, isn't he?
He is a classic.
He is a classic. Look, people don't like the way he speaks. A lot of people, get right up with that. But end of the day, I judge the man on what he does. And what is he doing right now? He's saving America. And on a social side of things, I was watching a Tommy Robinson interview last night, and he very openly said, I thank Donald Trump, I thank America for saving the world and opening the door to free speech and stopping this overlord thoughts and control that we get from Albanese or Starmer or these types. So obviously, the World Economic Forum, all of those sort of things. So he might ruffle some feathers, but I don't. Well, in fact, I think it's a very good thing.
Well, you've mentioned Tommy Robinson from England. England's in real trouble because
a mess.
They have. Trump's always highlighting the fact the migration issue is a problem. Secondly, their energy issue is a problem. They don't produce any energy. They import it all in, which leaves them so vulnerable to so many things with this whole green agenda. They are so vulnerable economically, and not just economically, but militarily now, because they've been resting on their laurels as far as being involved with NATO is concerned.
That's right.
And if America's kind of withdrawing, we defend ourselves first and do the right thing by us. Secondly, that you don't bring and produce your own energy, and you've got this conflict going on where the tap can be turned off very easily in Europe. You're stuck, and you're like trying to scramble because Europe has not been productive or innovative for 20 years now. That's costing them.
Yeah. Look, two countries that are unbelievably under the control of buying energy is there's many, but the ones that stand out to me is the UK and also Germany. Okay, Germany, I mean, which is an industrial giant.
Yeah.
But if I was running the place, it would be running on nuclear. It would absolutely. That would be they would take away this reliance to the pipeline that was coming through Ukraine. You'd actually get some sovereignty. Why do they not want that to happen?
Well, the problem you've got now is that a lot of these countries signed up to the EU how many decades ago, right? So they don't really have the ability to do that self-determination decisions. They've got to get permission to do anything, and that's the problem. And then if somebody is in a let me give you this example. When I was in university, we had a group exercise where we had to produce a documentary, or we had to produce a film. The problem is if a couple of students in there decide to ride on the coattails of those who are working hard, you got a problem. They're dragging down those who are high achievers, and the other ones are just going, well, this really isn't my major. I'm just doing this for fun. That's a problem. And I think that's a problem with the European Union. If you don't have all the state members being productive and they're just riding on the coattails of those who are doing well and working hard, you got a problem. And we saw that highlighted when Greece was, facing bankruptcy and all that sort of stuff, dragging great economies into it.
It was. I mean, the euro was really, really heavily affected by that. I mean, what you've just said there about the fact that, okay, there's some people who work really hard, those people who stand up, those people who make things happen, and those who just come along for the ride in your university. I mean, welcome to socialism.
And this is the thing, like in a business, you can fire someone.
Yeah.
You're slacking off, boom, we don't need you, sorry. Or we've got to make cuts. You're going first because you're not producing and lifting
You're not
your weight.
productive.
No, you're not doing your weight here. Whereas in the EU, it's like, well, who has actual power there? Who's actually controlling it? Who can say you're fired?
I mean, was the EU originally about, okay, making a consolidated power so that they were stronger from a military point of view, or was it a financial thing? Was it a agriculture? What was the primary reason for
Or
that?
was it about control? And I think that's probably the bigger issue.
I felt like
there.
I led you into that, mate.
It wasn't more control that we can now control these nations under one power, and that you can look at the benefits. And this is where the big danger sign is. It's like, let's go for sell out for convenience. Okay, look, it's a paying carrying. The French currency. It's a paying carrying the Italian and then the German, and you just cross these borders, and now you've got to swap your money for that currency, local currency. Let's just make it all one.
Yeah.
That convenience comes at a massive price, and that price is freedom and autonomy.
Well, they've contradicted themselves, though, because, okay, now it's all automated money. They're tap, 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 go, go, go. People don't use cash like they used to. Please do, please do, please do. Use cash as much as you can, because guess what? The government does not need to keep tabs on us. And speaking of tabs, every time you do use those cards, there's an added fee. There's so much money there that is eroding as well. So you can't. Where I'm going is you can't use that excuse anymore. If you are in the UK and you head over to France, guess what? Tap and go, baby, and it changes the currency for you.
One of the things we teach at Blue Sky Factory is having almost like an emergency fund that is outside that system as you go.
Yes.
And it was interesting. I was reading an article from a guy I follow myself, and he found himself in a similar situation where he was in Singapore. He was an American in Singapore, and found that his credit cards and all that weren't being accepted in Singapore.
Ooh, yeah.
So he's thinking, what do? I've got to get to this conference. How am I going to pay for the Uber ride and all this sort of thing? And he tried to do things on his phone to call the bank back home and get it sorted. Yep. And of course, those American networks are different on their telcos than they are in Singapore. So he couldn't make a call out. So he's thinking, what do? He goes to the hotel, talks to the concierge, and figures out, you know what, I could do payment this way electronically and it'll work. Now we talk about these kind of systems and building those kind of systems for emergencies in case accounts, like I found at one point my accounts were frozen. Oh, no. How do you work around that? And it's funny because you've got the man who's shaking things up. Trump was in the very same situation across all his businesses the moment he entered into politics, and they're trying to shut him down and his cash flow. So that's the big deal here, is when you disrupt someone's cash flow, then it's game on. And I've seen this play out more and more. And that's essentially what's happening here as far as the big banks, central banks are concerned, all the geopolitics, it all comes down to economy. Remember from last week, the United States was targeting Iran's economy before it was, putting bombs in place.
Well, that's what sanctions are about, aren't they? I mean, I kind of see sanctions a little bit like, I don't know, a bully holding back, or stealing your lunch money. It only works for a certain amount of time until somebody actually has to stand up and fight for themselves.
It's like the modern day of circling around the castle. And what do they call that again? That type of warfare where they just wait for them to escape, and no imports can come in, no exports can come out.
Embargo, basically, but I can't think of the term you're searching for.
And just they cut off that supply, and fresh vegetables getting in, fresh food. Well, that's what cash flow is these days. That's what pays your bills, that's what pays your groceries. Cutting that off, that's a big, big concern. So having those systems in place that are outside the control of centralization is a powerful move.
Well, like you said before, this is something you do teach with Blue Sky Factory, and I think that's an incredibly important thing. I think we live in a world now where we have to have some alternatives. You can't just rest in your laurels. I've actually, funny enough, we were having a show earlier today and we were talking about crypto, and I cannot believe how many of my friends, how many people in my close circle have had their bank accounts frozen. And it's not like yourself, mate. I mean, you're a very good law-abiding guy. It's happened to you. I think to myself, so many people I know have actually had that restriction on them, sometimes for months and months and months.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they want to transfer some money or they want to buy. You've got to be kidding me.
Mine was simply because I changed the governance in some of my business entities with my accountant.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
And ASIC triggered it, and that I could understand why. And then I'm getting warnings. There was an error internally within the thing of the know your client rules, and I had given them all the paperwork, jumped through all the hoops, wasted so much time on this.
And you do.
And they still froze it. And at the point, what was going on at that time is my dad had passed away. And so that's the last thing I wanted to be dealing with.
Of course.
While you're in grieving and this sort of stuff, it's like, oh, for goodness sake. Yeah. So that's what got me thinking, how can I operate this without using a bank account?
And this is also where a lot of people, they think about, when we talk about money, they see money as power. And perhaps sometimes in my life, I've probably seen it that way as well. I think a lot of us do. It gives us power to do things. But to me, money these days and the pursuit of money is more about freedom, about having the options to do other things and not to be controlled by others.
Gives you choice.
Yeah, quite the opposite to what a lot of people aspire to, I guess.
Money is simply a tool to do good by. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
I've heard one of my mentors call it happy tickets.
I love that.
And it's like, how many happy tickets can you invest, or how can your happy tickets work for you? But the big thing I always say to people is, look, who controls what? Does your money control you, or do you control your money? And that's a really hard test there, because for many people, it's the money that controls them, or the fear of running out of it.
Oh, very much so. And we're living in incredibly tough times right now. So being sensible, using your money very correctly, and certainly not wasting it, but understanding the system is, I think, more important than it ever has been.
The game is rigged against you when you think about it, because there's two economies that operate. There's a Babylonian system and there's a preferred economy. If you look at the contrast, it's massive. The whole intent of the Babylonian system was to rule over you, to control you, to keep you from getting ahead. And you notice it happen, because it happens in increments. Like, the preferred economy never had taxes involved in it, right? Imagine how
Can we have that again, please?
Yeah.
Please.
Well, you got Trump educating the masses on how they're better off without income tax, right? So look at that going, and you're criticizing him. Do you understand? Are you actually listening to what he's doing? Which politician have you known to educate the masses, hey, you're better off without income tax? None.
I've never heard that before.
Right. People can't get past the whole propaganda they've heard for how many years now, since 2016 or 2015, even prior to that election. And if you look at the preferred economy, you weren't meant to pay interest on loans.
When you taught that, when I learned that through one of your courses, blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, because I wasn't aware of that. I mean, to my mind, there's always been somebody who's had control of the money. Yeah. I
mean, if I'm to give you a loan, it's to help you out, not to rule over you for 30 years.
No, that's right. Maybe we should just talk off camera. But it's true. It is true. And I mean, it's got a lot to do with your quality as a human being. And I think the people, those who want to use money as power and do control people, it's not a very positive way to live. No, it's the system.
I have seen it where somebody of very great big net worth would use fear and intimidation, and I'd see people in his office cowering as he would boom over them, and you haven't paid, and all this sort of stuff. And it was just fear.
Yep.
And I'm going, this is not right. This
and it happens even in in a strange sort of thing, in a small little microcosm here. I remember an ex-wife of mine whose mother used to control all of the kids with money. It was so obvious. And I think, why are you letting that happen? And I walked in and I was like, my attitude was, you can't do that anymore. Okay, we're doing all right. We don't need your help. So that the control can go. And seeing that person just explode with rage because they couldn't control one aspect of their family anymore. It's common even on a small scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we explore a lot of the relationship you have with money through our courses as well. What makes you fearful? What makes you feel greedy? What are the things that do that? Because there's nothing like, some of our students, we teach on trading the markets and that sort of stuff. There's nothing like the markets. If you have any fear about money, for those fears to be amplified through the ups and downs and the volatility, especially in situations like we're seeing now with the oil and the conflicts going on.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this then. Okay, while everyone's panicking, everyone's freaking out right now, is there opportunity?
Absolutely. We are watching one of the biggest wealth transfers happen in our lifetime, in generations. And I'm not just talking like 100 years. I'm talking hundreds of years. And this is what I've been saying for the last couple of years at our seminars and stuff like this and teaching our students. It's positioning yourself to receive that wealth transfer that's so critical here, because I can see the wealth of the wicked going to the righteous. And that's, in scripture, it's encoded in spiritual law. And when it's that, it's very exciting. And when you see these tumultuous times, well, do you think those powers that hold those finances for so long are going to give it over easily? No, there's a battle going on. There's a fight going on. Yeah. And this is what you've got to bear in mind. What's going on really behind the scenes is this battle between good and evil, and this wealth transfer that's happening that will catch them by surprise.
The conversations I have with people these days, there are so many people who are now awake to what's going on so many different levels. We're talking about the media, we're talking about politics, we're talking about money. They understand how they're being controlled with money as well. It is really encouraging to realise we're kind of at a bit of a tipping point. We're so close to such a monumental change in the world, and I personally want to be part of that.
And to actually take advantage of that wealth transfer, time is running out. The window is closing very, very quickly. And I've been saying to people, look, if you want to do it, you got to move quick. You can't just sit on this and, I should have done this. I don't want to live with regret in my life. I've missed opportunities that I should have taken advantage. I look back over my life and go, I should have done this, but I've gone, right, I'm not going to miss that opportunity now. And it's been a good lesson. So you go, okay, it wasn't a wasted lesson. It's one thing to make a mistake, it's another thing to repeat it. And I'm going, take action, take action, take action. It's so critically important.
It's a mind shift. In my opinion, it is, and it's such a good one. When you go, the markets are down. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, look, silver's starting to drop. Well, guess what? Opportunity knocks.
Absolutely.
Buy now, get yourself, this is the time when you need to consolidate and actually think about the big picture.
I've got positions in the markets and I'm sitting in cash and just got low buy limit orders in. I'm going, let's grab it when it hits those price points. And that is not financial advice.
Of course, this show is a conversation.
It's just saying that's what I'm doing on certain assets at the moment because I see opportunity there. But I'm going, look, this is where the wealth really transfers. This is where it all happens. And you've got to be very clear. I've been saying to my students, you've got to stick to your strategy and have very, very steady hands in these times because when things are screaming and yelling, and I expect it to get even more exciting and even more shake up, you've got to stick to your strategy.
Now, during the show today, mate, I've actually seen the little message that has come up and told me that people are watching on other platforms that we can't see and they're making comments, which is fantastic. And we'll obviously look at those during the week. But great thing to do is to go to YouTube. Quite frankly, like and subscribe. If you can do that, then guess what? You can actually be part of the conversation through YouTube, which makes things fantastic. It is wonderful that people are seeing us on so many different platforms, but I'd like to have a two-way conversation. It's always a good thing. But without doing the great shill here, and I can say this from personal experience, it is all about education. And for myself and the mindset change for myself as far as what you do at Blue Sky Factory, mate, it is very, very valuable. And I think that it's so layered. It is something that if you don't do, you're doing yourself an injustice.
Well, thank you. Yeah, look, we just try to work with people where they're at, and everybody's at different levels and different journeys, and it's not a race. It's in terms of competing against other people. It's you sticking to your lane and doing what is your life purpose. That's the whole bottom line of it, because your life purpose is very different from my life purpose. It's very different. Don't try to be me. I'm not going to try to be you. But if we can put these principles in place where you actually achieve it, and you are doing, the world needs you to do your life purpose. I mean, Aaron, I'm so grateful for what you're doing here at Edge Radio. Because the world needs what you're doing here at Edge Radio. We really do need somebody who's saying, listen, I'm going to give a voice of freedom. This is what's going on. Let's pull the curtains back and see what's really happening. I mean, without you, where would we be in the last 6 years? It's been phenomenal.
We're working hard. We're getting there. We're getting there, mate. I appreciate that very much. I really do. I was going to ask you for a final thought, but I think you just gave it. Well and truly, thank you very much for being part of the Greater Wealth here in Edge Radio Australia.